My message today is Looking for Mr. Right, a common sense perspective on the belief that saves. Introduction, Error and Christian Faith. By the way, this is on is the manuscript available as yet? Okay. Before YouTube, before even Candid Camera, way back when I was growing up, television host Art Linkletter made a big hit with the Kids Say the Darndest Things segment on his weekly show. Children would say cute things that struck his studio audience and millions of homemakers tuning in for the late afternoon show as just crazy enough to laugh Mr. Linkletter all the way to the bank. Now those kids have all grown up, but they haven't changed a bit. I know because I've met them. In church. Christians still say and believe the darndest things. Recently I learned that one self-styled Christian group was teaching that degenerate descendants of the cursed seed of Ham were still alive in the northeastern United States. Why don't we hear about this on the news? They only congregate at night, and they travel only along the open spaces under high-tension power lines. So now you know. Of course, these haywire beliefs make great job security for us theologians, or wannabe theologians. If it weren't for theologians, it would surprise me if anyone believed the right thing. Somebody has to straighten out the multitudes. Of course, there is that small matter that theologian types often flat out contradict each other on points far and wide, large and small, from the angels on the head of a pin to the age of the universe. But if we keep at it, we may yet turn those other guys around before too long. Although even saying so may add one more darndest thing to the growing list. Fortunately, haywire beliefs need keep no one from eternal life. I assume all of us here today agree that faith in Jesus Christ for eternal life is a sure bet. I will argue today that as it is Jesus himself who offers that life, he doesn't let either the quantity of belief about himself, that would be orthodoxy, the quality of belief about himself, that would be orthodoxy, or the quantity of those beliefs, that is ignorance, stop him. Jesus himself gives eternal life to anyone who simply comes to believe that he, Jesus, can do so. Stated in other words, the right Jesus is the one who gives life to anyone who can believe it, just as he promised. Jesus is exactly the right kind of person to be able to do this, and he is unhindered to do so by any other beliefs, haywire or not, which we may hold. This perspective is, of course, far from universal. To some, the idea that one can be certain of eternal life without knowing a substantial theology of Jesus Christ is itself a haywire belief, to be resisted as if it were cultic. Having recently written on this topic, I have quickly become aware of its opponent's very determined point of view. Some of you may have encountered folks who think differently. This paper is an attempt to respond to the idea that belief of a certain theological framework about Jesus is a necessary bottom line. I'm sorry. We are missing something here. We're missing a line. A necessary bottom line, eternal life that counts. Instrumental beliefs. I'm sorry, I will have to find the right page here. Hold on just a moment. There we go. It's on the back of the page. Oh, there it is. I'll resume that sentence. This paper is an attempt to respond to the idea that belief of a certain theological framework about Jesus is a necessary aspect of faith for eternal life. We'll consider in this paper that faith, which in the biblical sense does not require orthodoxy, I'll try to prove that point, is no different from good common sense about belief. Further, this common sense view of faith is far more direct and effective in dealing with cults than is the right Jesus approach. And finally, we hope to show it to be all around more scriptural than one which emphasizes orthodoxy for salvation. Looking for Mr. Right, belief and saving faith. To begin with an everyday example, let me describe a woman I recently met, about 50 years old, with at least some college education, who will not fly. As I recall, the woman was otherwise very reasonable, but she still won't get on an airplane. It's too dangerous for her. If my psychologist brother-in-law is right, this woman represents a fair-sized class of people. He used to make part of his living helping people, such people, gain confidence to get on a plane. It's in Dallas. On the other hand, my 4-year-old granddaughter will be flying to Dallas this summer, and I am certain that Haley will give absolutely no thought to getting on one of those big shiny things that go in the sky. She'll simply have her mom and dad's word that it will happen. And with that, she will happily run, and I mean run, to the plane so she can go to see her other grandpa. What's the difference between my granddaughter and the grandmother who won't fly? Haley has every good and right reason to believe her parents, while the woman apparently has found no one she trusts to convince her that it is safe. Of course, people get on planes all the time completely and blissfully unaware of the underlying mechanics. Getting on a 350-ton conveyance, 32,000 feet in the air, and descending safely to the passenger's destination thousands of miles away, often across vast spaces of water, must, after all, depend on very strong principles. But how many passengers give any thought to the physical laws of Bernoulli or Newton that underlie aeronautical lift? How many consider the billions of dollars spent every year to orchestrate departures and arrivals, and to keep pilots and support staff trained and disciplined? But people don't really need to know the principles to be confident of their destination. It is enough, and millions find it so, to depend on what can be as simple a reason as, my mommy said I'm going to see Grandpa. Lacking such a promise, however, can keep many a grandmother grounded. Of course, Christian faith is the same. If a 4-year-old can have full confidence with none of the underlying knowledge that her flight will get where it should, why should we think it necessary that an inquirer know the principles of substitutionary atonement, or hypostatic union, or any number of other truths about Christ before believing his promise of eternity? To ask the question in this way is to highlight the illogic of requiring theology before claiming eternal life. Truth helps toward the saving persuasion, but what is absolutely necessary may be completely different for each individual. A checklist cannot be prescribed. It is belief in the bottom line. Eternal life that counts. Instrumental beliefs are just that, the means of attaining to faith. To use another common sense example, consider the starry-eyed teenage girl who heads off for the first time in Daddy's T-Bird. All she knows is that turning the key will get her to Johnny's house in a very short time. What does she need to understand about mechanical engineering? About combustion? About the friction coefficient of rubber on roadway? For that matter, what if she believes some haywire theory? Say that flubber fuels the car. Or if the flyer believes the flubber haywire about flight. Inadequate and unorthodox evidence can negatively influence belief, it is true. But belief may perfectly well arise completely without any understanding of the instrumentals. Again, the application to Christian faith is transparent. The underpinnings of Jesus' ability to grant eternal life help in bringing people to faith. But to require them as an article of faith is overreaching. Even more to the point of this paper, what if this same teenager starts looking for Mr. Right? She's not yet sure about Johnny, but she hopes one day to meet a man whose vow of love and lifelong care she can believe, and so live happily ever after. She may well find Mr. Right without the soundness of wise parental counsel, without private investigators, data from online dating applications, or even responses to a personal questionnaire. And even with these, she may still find Mr. Wrong. Intuition, his wink, the color of his truck. Any number of considerations may bring our sweetheart to the conviction, true or false, that she has finally found Mr. Right.